And again, I'm Bronwyn Strong with the Natural History Society of Maryland. We're so happy that you could join us to learn about the Christmas bird count. And this is part of our community Science Saturday series, where we're acting as a conduit or a pipeline to get volunteers into these community science programs. And we're so excited and happy to have Janet Millenson here. Janet is a native of the DC area. So again, wonderful that we're able to utilize technology, and geography is not a limiting factor. And she is a self-described bird nerd since childhood. So I'm not saying that, and I think that birders wear that moniker as a badge of honor. She's been the president of the Maryland Ornithological Society from 2004 to 2006, and she participated in a Christmas bird count, her first one in 1980, and she usually does 2 each season. So this will be her 18th year as a compiler of the Sugarloaf Mountain Christmas bird count, which I'm sure we'll understand what that is during the presentation, and where she organizes the teams of birders and reports the tallies to the Audubon Society afterwards. So she is the right person to give us the lowdown on the Christmas bird count. So I'm very happy, Janet, that you have agreed to share your knowledge with us. We're, I think, excited to learn from you. So I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Let's try the screen sharing again. And are we there? Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Great. As you heard, I'm with the Maryland Ornithological Society, also known as MOS, and I saw one of the people here found out about this session through the Baltimore Bird Club Facebook page. Baltimore Bird Club is our oldest chapter. We have 15 chapters across the state. BBC was formed in 1945. So mdbirds.org, I'll have more than one, push for them in the course of this. Let's see. Okay, why is this not working so far? Let's see, page down. Okay, now I want to clarify something. I'm going to be talking about the when, the where, the what, the who, the why, the how of the Christmas bird count, and then give you answers to some, frequently asked questions and leave you with a few useful web links. And the first thing I want to do is clarify Christmas bird count. It's a term that's used sort of like referring to finals when you're in school. Finals take place during a week or so at the end of the semester, but you can also talk about your econ final, biology final, calculus final. So Christmas count is used again to refer to the whole effort as well as individual counts. And as you've heard, I've been doing them since 1980. I've done Christmas counts in Pennsylvania, California, DC, and Maryland. And in fact, the first one I did, our team literally saw more deer than birds the whole time we were out that day, literally. But somehow I didn't get discouraged. I kept doing it. So from year to year, so the official count period, a few years back, they used to sort of try and make it to match up with the days of the week. But a few years back, they said, we're just going to make it December 14th to January 5th every winter. And a lot of the counts usually do take place on the same day of the week. Like the Seneca count, which I participate in, is usually the first Sunday of the count period. The DC count and the Triadelphia Reservoir count are the first Saturday of the count period. The count that I lead, the Sugarloaf Mountain count, is usually the last Sunday of the count period. So the Sunday closest to New Year's. But sometimes these get shifted depending on holidays. You know, I wouldn't dare try to hold a bird count on New Year's Day. You know, who's going to want to get up at 5 in the morning then? And, you know, depending on the hunting calendar in a particular area. But again, the term Christmas bird count is a multi-week effort, but there are also specific counts. Okay, so what is it? It's an early winter bird census, and the National Audubon Society is in charge of it. It was started in 1900. I'll give you a bit more of the history in a moment. So this year is the 121st Christmas bird count, you know, of the whole effort. And bird count takes place on 24 hours, you know, midnight to midnight of a pre-selected day during the official count period, which I just showed you. And count circles are 15 miles in diameter, and theoretically they don't overlap each other. A few of them do, but mostly they're done so they don't overlap. And of course, because they are circles, that means you can't include everything. You know, you'll have some here and here and here and here. And there are places that you might want to count, but they're left out. But generally, people try to set up a circle in a way that really covers an area of interest and includes as many parks and so forth as possible. And as Bronwyn was saying, this is considered community science, and it makes a wonderful contribution, and it is lots of fun. Now, I will say, because, you know, the word bird census, like other official census efforts, you got to count everybody. So this means you're counting all the birds, and that includes the pigeons, the starlings, the sparrows, the gulls, you know, in the parking lots, as well as the parks. And, you know, I once was given an assignment, basically, this was out west, to count all the gulls in the stadium parking lot. And I said, you know, this is kind of boring. So the next year they sent me out to where I didn't even see another human being all day. So why do we have this event? Well, at the end of the 19th century, many birds were being hunted into extinction or near extinction. And as you probably know, the passenger pigeon did become extinct in 1914. Those were being hunted for food, but also feathers, women's hats. And somewhere I couldn't find, there was a photo of a woman's hat with a Carolina parakeet on it as decoration. Yeah, you know, we don't do that anymore. So Frank Chapman, who was the bird curator at the American Museum of Natural History, and had started a magazine called Bird Lore, which I guess ultimately became Audubon magazine, he proposed in 1900, how about we do something different? A lot of people had gone out on Christmas Day and tried to see how many birds they could kill. He said, why don't you go out and see how many birds you can count? And so the first Christmas bird count took place in 1900. And I think there was something like 27 people went out to a lot of different locations. So that's why we say that was the first bird count, and now we're on the 121st. So they mostly take place in the Western Hemisphere. And this data is from the last season, 2019 to 2020, and, you know, December into January. Almost 2,000 count circles in the United States, and for about 470 in Canada, a lot also in Latin America, which is great because many of our birds are down there for the winter and so forth. Maryland, there are 24 officially in Maryland, even though they have bits and pieces elsewhere, and one in the District of Columbia. I'm going to be talking a lot about the Sugarloaf count because that's the one I'm in charge of and have the most data for. So here is from the Audubon website. Here is a map of our circle. It is centered not exactly on the summit of the mountain. You know, people try and give them an evocative, appropriate name. but basically our circle runs from north of Germantown to south of Frederick, mostly Frederick County, Montgomery County, and a little chunk of Northern Virginia. So, by the way, this year, some of these counts are canceled because Audubon said, look, we've got the pandemic going on. If for whatever reason you don't feel you can hold it, it's okay to cancel it. You know, this is going to be a year with a lot of databases having an asterisk in them. Okay, let's go down. So who participates? Well, the two general categories are people who are out in the field and people who are feeder watchers. You can do both. When I participate in the Seneca count, I spend much of the day out in the field, and then I come back in and look at my feeders because my house is inside my sector of the Seneca count. All ages. For a field observer, I think age 12 and up makes the most sense. I have gone out with a 12-year-old. I think if you have somebody younger, you know, getting up early and going out on a winter day, you know, 8-year-old would be great for feeder watching, but unless you have somebody who is a real birding prodigy, they do exist, probably age 12 and up, no upper age limit. All abilities, because there are different kinds of routes, there are different options, and all levels of birding experience. I'll be talking about that a little more. But we generally try to pair a novice with more experienced people. As you can see, this 62,000 observers, there's obviously some double counting. You know, I do 2 different counts during the year, so my name will show up twice, but many tens of thousands of people. And it's free. The effort now goes on voluntary donations. It used to be $5 a person to help pay for the printed summary report, but it's online now, so that's not needed. Why do it? Getting outside in the fresh air, working off that eggnog and those cookies, getting some vitamin D at a time of year when most of us would just rather be staying inside. I do not like cold weather. I do not like getting up early, but for Christmas counts, I will do it. You get to learn a lot more about local birds and where to find them. There are a lot of sort of nooks and crannies that you might not be aware of normally, but when you're given the mission to find all the birds, this is a really great opportunity. Now, let me tell you the informally competitive part, very informally, but you try to maybe see more birds than you did last year. You try to get some cool birds that the other sectors, the other teams didn't get. You try to be competitive with other counts. It used to be that the Seneca count, I think, had the most, I don't know, pileated woodpeckers or something, but then a count in Northern Virginia took over. So, and little things like my sector of Sugarloaf, we try to, some years we've been able to see all 7 woodpecker species that are found in Maryland. You know, 5 or 6 of them are not hard, but getting those red-headed woodpeckers, they're not as easy to find. So you can have fun with it. You can have a lot, you know, have we seen, you know, how many species of, I don't know what, falcons can we get? So if you're a data geek, which I also am, it's a lot of fun. There is the chance of finding a rarity, and that's defined as maybe out of season or out of range. There's some things that are here all summer, no big deal, but this time of year, they're Florida or points south, Latin American. If you find one here, that's pretty exciting. Sometimes we've gotten things that are very unusual, like West Coast birds have shown up. Sometimes, yeah, out of season things can linger. Oh, let me go back to the informally competitive. Yeah, I'd written down some numbers. The count in Maryland that gets the highest number of species, Ocean City last year had 148 species. DC had 96. Now my count's average is 86 species, but our cumulative total is twice that, 172 over the years. And there are many regulars that are, seen every year. I mean, it's like you go into Baskin Robbins, they might have the flavor of the month, but they'll always have vanilla. But the fact that there's such variability from year to year is really exciting. So the data is not only fun to look at for yourself, and the birding community, but real scientists in many other fields can use it. The effects of climate change. Birds are, being hit by different things. The food, sometimes they're birds that normally are here in the winter, but because of climate change, they don't feel the need to come down from Canada or New England like they used to. So, usually you go to a particular body of water and see a certain selection of ducks, maybe not lately so much, because things are not freezing up north. They don't need to come down here. There are patterns. Maybe every 5 years we get eruptions of interesting things like snowy owls. But again, we're looking at continental effects. Diseases, West Nile virus. I personally, for a class I was taking on mapping stuff, I looked at Christmas bird count data on the sort of differential effects of West Nile virus on American crows, because in the about 20 years ago, there was a major hit to the American crow population in the area, but it was not uniform across the state, maybe because of, I don't know, the types of mosquitoes or whatever. Habitat destruction, which, look at development. I mean, if you do a Christmas count in something that might be a nice country, well, it might be going from woods to agricultural fields to giant tract houses over the course of years. So, we're no longer finding certain bird species there. And range expansion is not only due to climate, but there have been questions. Decades ago, you didn't find cardinals or mockingbirds way up into New England. They're there now. Is that because people are feeding the birds? So, there's a lot of things that can be studied. The fun, friendship, and great anecdotes. Well, I have 40 years worth of anecdotes, including something about the time I got stuck in quicksand on a Christmas count, but I'll tell you more about that later. But it's a great bonding experience. And there are people, I've become very friendly with simply from being on a bird count with them one year. Okay. So how is the count done? So again, this is a map of my count circle. Now do the math. If you have a circle 15 miles in diameter, that's about 176 square miles. That is a lot of territory to cover in one day. So count circles are generally divided into sectors. Now, it's probably too small for you to see, but my circle has 14 sectors. However, there is no number 12. We have 2 sector 8s. It predates me. I've talked to the guys who set it up and they can't really explain it. But basically we have 14 sectors. 1, 2, and 3 are along the Potomac River. So those are mostly on the C&O Canal towpath. Sector 14 is in Northern Virginia. And the way sectors are divided up generally is, natural boundaries, like I say, like the river, major roads, maybe you want to enclose a park in its own sector. It's not anything, there's no official way to do it, but you want to do something that makes the most sense for participants. My sector of this one, because I'm a sector leader as well as the overall compiler, is number 4, which is down there at the bottom. And sort of, let's see, Bellsville, Barnesville, Dickerson. It's not the most exciting, but generally, you try to, a circle is going to have a mix of public and private land. So this circle was drawn to include Little Bennett and Black Hill Regional Parks. Of course, the Sino Canal is a national park. And up north there's the Monocacy Battlefield. My own sector is all private property. So I always call the, I have the phone numbers of a lot of the property owners and call them in advance and say, please don't come out with, your dog and your gun and try and chase me. It's just a bunch of harmless bird watchers. A really good birding stop on my route went to a new owner who was not swayed by harmless bird watchers and said, sorry, you can't come in anymore. But most people are very cooperative. As I know, most field parties start around sunrise, which in winter is kind of late, it's 7 to 8. Some people go out even earlier to do what's called owling. So you're not going a lot of places. Maybe you're playing a tape or whatever. I haven't done it. And, sometimes it's productive and sometimes it isn't. Those hours are kept separate. People go generally on foot or by car, but also canoe, kayak, or other boat, snowmobile, all kinds of things. It's a hemisphere-wide effort. People, go out however they can. Some teams, depending on, well, actually, it can be a mix of foot and car. You can drive places, walk for a bit, drive to your next stop. Some people are walking all day. Some people are basically driving the whole time, and carpooling is strongly preferred, which again, we can't do this year. When I was in California, there was one count, I heard a certain sector, the people just sat in a coffee shop all day because it overlooked a marsh. So they sat by the window all day and wrote down the birds they saw. They didn't have to go out at all. I tend to be outdoors, the stuff I've done. And again, anecdotes can come. But the time you spend depends on the size of the territory, the number of birds. In California, bird counts basically went dawn to dark because there's a lot of birds. Here in Maryland, you might run out of the birds pretty early, or the people walking along the river, if they're going 3 miles, when they walk that 3 miles, they're done. And of course, early in the morning is usually best. You can't be everywhere at the same time. So let's see, if you do go all day, maybe you have lunch, maybe you bring lunch, maybe you stop at some sort of casual restaurant, warmth, indoor plumbing. But I say casual restaurant. Let's put it this way. When you go into a McDonald's and they look at you funny because you don't really meet the dress code, I mean, you look pretty, muddy and shabby and alarming. One count I did in California, the team leader literally pulled out her sandwich and ate while we were walking because she didn't want to even stop to eat. But normally, people do take some sort of break. Okay, how is the count done? And I have here, again, a picture of the tally sheet for my own. It's not every possible bird in Maryland. It's not the 176 I listed, but there's official forms that you report your species tallies, the counts of birds on them. And let me point out a couple things. Some people use this sheet in the field and put little tally marks and then the total. I like to write it in a notebook and then come home and copy it more neatly. Either way is fine. One question that comes up, do you have to see the bird to be able to count it? No. In fact, Hearing it, there's some birds that are very distinctive. In fact, for some species, if you don't hear it, you can't identify it. We have in Maryland American crows and fish crows, and they look very, very, very similar, particularly flying overhead. They sound very different. An American crow is the standard caw, caw, and a fish crow is the joke being, are you an American crow? But if it's not calling, you write it down. I don't know if you can see, it's partway, it's at the bottom of the left column. Crow SPA, SP, stands for species. So if you have a bunch of crows flying over and they are silent, you count them, you put them as crow SPA, because you cannot identify which species. There's also gull SPA, because sometimes, they're way out there on the river, you don't know. Accipiter SPA, which is Sharpshin and Cooper's hawk generally. And also, I think people enter other things. Blackbird SPA is on the form, but people will put down sparrow SPA, duck SPA, if it's foggy or something, so it's they know how many birds were there, even if they couldn't tell exactly what. Some things, you can see the boldface on the left for bald eagles, and at the bottom for ravens. We don't want to double count eagles. I know in my count, there's a limited number of eagle nests that we know about. If I'm in one location and see an eagle flying over at 9:30 in the morning, flying east, and somebody to the east of me sees an eagle at 9:45, it's probably the same bird. So we make a note of that so we don't double count it, and give them more details. And also anything else unusual. The other side of this form collects information on effort, the start and finish time, the weather, temperature, wind, was the water frozen, was it foggy, cloudy, raining, snowing, how many people, time on foot, by car, feeder watching, anything else. Owling is separate. And we record party hours, because if you have 3 people in the field for 2 hours, we don't count that as 6 hours. That's 2 party hours. And we get people's names and contact information. Now, if you see something really unusual, there is a rare bird report that Audubon has you fill out, and it's asked for all kinds of, where it is, where you saw it, what kind of, optics you had, every single detail, how visible, have you ever seen this kind of bird before? It's great if people can supply photos as well. Now, this other category is count week birds. They give you some plus or minus. 3 days before or after, if you see, if this wonderful bird shows up the day before the count, but it's not there on the day itself, you can put it down as a count week species. They don't care about the number, but it is a species that was seen as part of that year's count effort. Now, tally rally. Excuse me. Obviously, this year we're not having them. They're not always held, but it's really nice to be able to get together that evening and share food. I mean, sometimes it's potluck, sometimes it's at a like a barbecue place. Again, remember, these are muddy people, tired. We've been out all day, it's fun to get together. And it's not an official tally because you haven't necessarily gotten all the data in yet, but somebody might say, describe what they saw. It was better than usual. We had such and such interesting bird fly over. And this year, I'm going to try and do mine by Zoom. So, like you said, get your food, show up. And it's also nice because, after a long day out in the field, you don't want to drive somewhere. You want to go home, you want to shower, you want to change clothes. They're fun to have, but it can be challenging. So this is basically who participates. And like I said, there's field observers and feeder watchers. And if you're a participant, if you're a field observer, you really need to show up on time and be prepared. And I will talk about that a little more. The sector leaders recruit the team members. Again, your sector might have one team, one field party, it might have more, it depends. And assign the routes as needed. This year, I'm going to have to split it up because I normally carpool with some people. And if we can't carpool together, I'm just going to have to say, you go to these stops, I'll go to those. And we might have to skip some places. Normally I wouldn't mind going into somebody's swampy woods because I know if I, trip on a fallen tree trunk and sprain my ankle, somebody's there with me, but I'm not going to do that myself. Also, if you're a sector leader, as I mentioned, you might need to get permission to enter private property. And the sector leaders also record the required data and send it to the compiler in a timely way. I'm the compiler. My job is to recruit people overall. We get volunteers calling up. Again, this year it's tougher to assign people. I distribute the official forms and instructions, which I get from Audubon. I collect and enter the data, and I also have a deadline for doing that. Enter it on the Audubon website. And afterwards, I share the results with the participants, how many species we saw, the high numbers, the low numbers, anything unusual, rare, new to our cumulative list. I talk about the weather. Each year I promise to arrange good weather, but I just, I do what I can. The regional editor, we have one for Maryland, reviews data from all the Christmas counts in their jurisdiction. And if there's a rare bird report that might seem a little insufficiently documented, for instance, they might say, no, you can't include that one. So there's some frequently asked questions. Is birding expertise needed? And the answer is no. One of my responses to that always is somebody has to write down the tallies, which is true, but spotting birds is as important as identifying them, because I may know all the birds in my neighborhood, but I'm not able to necessarily see them. And if somebody's behind me and goes, oh, look, what's that at the top of the tree sitting quietly? That can be wonderfully helpful. And of course, if there's a large flock, everybody, if we say, oh, look at that large flock of, Canada geese grazing in the field, it's helpful to count them. I remember once there was a very large field and it ended up we figured about 2,000 geese in it, and it was sort of, okay, John, you count on that side and I'll count on this side. So you don't need to be an expert. This one comes up a lot. Will it be canceled in case of rain or snow? Again, no, almost never is it canceled or postponed. It might be cut short. If there is a blizzard, if there is an ice storm. Once we had an ice storm, the roads were covered with ice, and the compiler called everybody and said, don't start before 9 a.m. Give the sun a chance to melt the ice on the roads. It was great. We saw lots of birds. I've been in another one where around noon we said, we can't see anything more. It's snowing so hard. Driving home was an adventure. But ordinary rain, snow, not a big deal. Wind is probably the biggest barrier to hearing and seeing birds. But I remember it lightly snowing once, and under a bush, a hermit thrush was singing. It has a beautiful flute-like song, and this was around New Year's in the snow. It was just a magical moment. But normally, they do not get canceled. And unfortunately, mine being scheduled so late in the season, it's not like I'd really have an alternate date anyway. People ask, what should they bring? Binoculars and weather appropriate clothing and footwear, waterproof footwear. I have and have been with people who have stepped on what they thought was frozen ground and it was a wet pothole. So bring spares. You know, if you're going by car, it's easy to throw things into the trunk, but definitely dress for warmth and waterproofness and you know, comfort. I bring hand warmer packets. They're invaluable. Some people wear blaze orange. It depends when and where, you know, like an orange hat, excuse me, when and where you are birding. Definitely, I recommend a thermos of something warm and some snacks. Again, depending on where you are and what you have, a spotting scope might be useful. Obviously, if you're on foot, it can be annoying to carry around, but if you're going to be near, you know, a pond or a river, they can be very helpful in seeing waterfowl. And some sort of field guide. These used to be just books, but now there are many wonderful apps that can go on a phone to be consulted. And some people enter the bird tallies on the phone too. Okay. How do you know you're not double counting the same birds? This gets asked a lot. And let's say you see a chickadee and you walk 5 minutes along a path and you see another chickadee. Probably not the same bird because chickadees are, you know, going to stay in the same area. I'm here, I see a turkey vulture go over. I walk 5 minutes, I see a turkey vulture go over. Or a red-tailed hawk, probably the same. It depends, you know, this isn't going to be perfect. You just try to be consistent in your errors, you know. So you get to know the birds, and the little ones might be in a flock hanging around in one area, and the big ones might be cruising overhead. A related question, of course, goes back to those large flocks of geese and crows and starlings and blackbirds. How do you know you're counting them properly? Well, my father used to advise, count the number of wings and divide by 2. But you just estimate, you sort of clump. You go, okay, that's 5, and that's, okay, so that's 10, and you just, you know, you estimate. And last, do I still have time, Bronwyn? Okay. What was that about quicksand? Once upon a time in December 1986, I was on a bird count, the Point Reyes Christmas bird count. So that's north of San Francisco. And I was one of 3 teams around Tamales Bay. And one of the teams was out on the water in a boat. One of the teams was driving along the road. And we were walking in this marshy area in between the water and the road. And it was 8 a.m., foggy, 40 degrees. You could hear duck hunters in the distance. So we're, you know, walking around through all this wet stuff, and it's foggy. We didn't see much. And after a while, we said, let's go back to the car. Let's take a shortcut. Let's leap over this little tiny stream, and that'll get us back to the car much faster. So there are 3 of us, me, a woman named Ellen, and a tall guy named Tony. Tall, thin guy, this is relevant. Tony starts to leap over the stream, gets stuck in the mud. I'm leaping at the same time. I get stuck in the mud. It's all, you know, very funny until we, you know, we're wearing wellies, knee-high rubber boots. It's all very funny till we start to sink in above our knees. Then it wasn't so funny. Ellen, bless her heart, she was a school principal, very practical, smart woman. She had not started to leap. She pulled me out of my boots. I mean, I was just covered with mud. And between the 2 of us, we pulled Tony out of his boots and we walked back to the car in our wet socks, again, 40-degree temperature, you know, sharp grass, where luckily we had spare footwear. And there's a couple epilogues to this. One is, she said, oh, I have this old laundry basket. We can go back and pull them out of the mud. You know, Wellingtons are not totally cheap. You could stand on it like snowshoes, so you wouldn't sink it. So we go back, you know, wearing our spare footwear. Well, quicksand happens because of water flowing from underneath. The tide had come in. Where we were was now underwater. So it's a good thing we did get, you know, I don't know if all three of us had been there with the duck hunters that found us. So we ended up, even though I was, you know, covered in mud that never really came out of the clothing, we ended up birding the rest of the day. And when the teams for this sector met in a parking lot, it turned out there was a bird there by the parking lot, a rare bird, a brown shrike, which is an Asian bird that's only been seen in California a handful of times. So this was our reward for sticking with, you know, our cold brush with death for the rest of the day. So that's my quicksand story. Normally, Christmas bird counts don't involve anything quite so memorable. And let's see, what have I got here? These are some upcoming Christmas bird counts that I'm aware of, and I'll in a moment I'll show you some websites you can find out more. Here is the overall information you can get at the Audubon website and how to join, and they have a map of all count circles for those. So those of you who are not in the area, you can go there. And the Maryland Ornithological Society has a list of regional ones. So they do include, I think, even West Virginia and some in Virginia. So I will leave this up, and that's it. And I hope I have informed and entertained you, and I am open to questions.
That was wonderful, Janet. I have a quick question, and I'll just jump in before everybody else. So the feeder watch, do you have to be in part of a circle on that too, or do you just sit at your house and send in data somehow?
No, I should have clarified. Your data only counts if you are an official participant, and feeder watchers, are within the count circle. Like somebody contacted me recently saying, I live near Sugarloaf Mountain, can I help? And I was saying, get me your exact address and I will match you up with the right sector leader. But it does need to be official. So unfortunately, you know, on the day of the count, if some random person happens to be birding in that vicinity and sees a really good bird, if they're not an official participant, we're not supposed to write it down. Mm-hmm. Some people might.
All right, anybody have a question for Janet? Go ahead and unmute yourself and join the conversation.
Hi, Bronwyn.
Yes.
This is Susan.
Hey.
I was wondering, does Baltimore City, is the whole city included in a circle, or is it divided, you know, do the sectors divided up somehow?
What I would advise is the second thing here, go to the map of all count circles and zoom in on the Baltimore area, and that will show you. And I think if you click on the little image at the beginning of that map, I don't know, let me try and get there myself. Oh no, you can go there and zoom in and it will give you a link to who the compiler is and you can find out.
Okay.
But
thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? I answered all your questions preemptively, I guess.
So that's the best way if folks that are here want to get involved in a bird count near them, that you think that the best way to start is to go to the map, find the sector that's of interest and contact that sector leader?
Well, it would be compiler. It would be, I don't know how other circles are divided into sectors. I know they are. You know, it's like, I am a sector leader for the Seneca count, and but I couldn't draw you a map of the other sectors. For the Sugarloaf count, which is mine, that's the map I showed you, and I am also a sector leader within it. So I know if that sounds a little confusing, but again, 176 square miles, you need to divide it up somehow.
And it's not too late to get involved in a count, is it?
No, I'm still getting emails from people. And, you know, again, sometimes people are really eager and they want to bring their little kids. But, you know, again, a 6-year-old is just not going to be out there at 7 a.m. on a December day. But you know, 12-year-old, maybe.
So Janet, in your Sugarloaf counts, have you seen any interesting trends in with the data?
That are depressing or non-depressing? Let me look at my write-up from last year that I sent out to people.
Depressing?
Well, no, it's the 35th, the last year summarized with 3 R's, rain and record robins. So, you know, I said our damp but dedicated 67 field counters plus 4 feeder watchers. It was wet and foggy. Are always, okay, we set a new record last time for wild turkeys and nearly doubled our previous record high for American robin. This was, again, just our circle, more than 6,000 robins. And this was a lot of different sectors reporting this. And a lot of count week species, 2 things. Somebody in count week last year had a Baltimore Oriole, which again is not a New Year's adjacent species around here. But last year we had a lot of low things that have been declining, a lot of the dicky birds, technical term, you know, things like juncos and, well, not titmice, chickadees, just a lot of things have been going down, cardinals in some areas. And some of it is, you know, hedgerows aren't there so much anymore. And so, you know, that's habitat, but we really don't know. You know, we don't know if it's a matter of climate change affecting the timing and availability of insects for, you know, food for nestlings, that kind of thing. So some of it, there's a new on the main Audubon website. There's something new this year. I haven't played with it yet. Trend mapper, something like that. But you can do all kinds of things with the data to see what's happening. Some things there's more of, you know, eagles, ravens. It used to be very exciting to see one east of Sugarloaf Mountain. And now here in Montgomery County, they breed. There's some breeding here.
Well, that was going to be my question. I mean, how accessible is the data?
Very.
And, you know, if folks want to access that, how would they do it?
Yeah, go to that first page, or, you know, just Audubon Christmas bird count, and you can search by a particular count. You can search by a species, by a year. Again, I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but it's a lot of fun stuff. And I keep a massive spreadsheet from my own counts and can look at it and look at the averages and the highs and the lows and how long it's been. Sometimes things, you know, Montgomery County, you used to have a lot of like bobwhites in Montgomery County. I mean, not necessarily this time of year, you know, but there's things you don't see anymore very much.
So if we look and we see what our area is where we live, and it says, you know, contact somebody, is that the next step, or should I take the information like I'm in the Loch Raven circle? That's where my house is. Do I?
No, I would. Well, okay. Let me see if I understand your question. If you want to be a feeder watcher, you mean?
Yeah, I guess first would be a feeder watcher, and second, what if I want to go out? Do I just write an email to the person, or how do I?
Yeah.
When it doesn't say the date on the little circle. Can I find the date somewhere else?
Oh, it doesn't?
Not on the thing that popped up on the map.
Maybe it's not happening this year.
No, it says compiler, it has the email of the compiler, and then it says count date, and it's just blank. And then it says contact co-compiler Kevin Graff at blah, blah, blah for area assignments. But I'd like to know what those are and more information. Do I go to this third?
No, just email these people. Wait a minute. This is a Maryland count.
No, I went, yeah, it's a Maryland count, but I went to the second link that you put up and I looked.
Try the third one, because that should have dates.
Is there any way, do you happen to have these that you could just, like, instead of me having to type it out, do you have them you can drop in the chat?
How do I do that? Or is that something, Bronwyn, how do I do that?
I can, well,
Let me,
just cut and paste this from your.
wait a minute, let me,
Sorry.
I think I'm in slideshow.
Otherwise, I'm just retyping.
I'm in slideshow mode. That was the problem. So I couldn't have access to it. Let's do it this way.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
There we go. And
Paste that into the chat.
where is the
The
chat?
chat should be at the bottom. At the bottom, you should see
Should be, shouldn't it? Let me make,
maybe escape out of your whole.
Yeah, you want to stop sharing your screen. It'll be easier for you to get to. all
okay. Pause share, stop share. There we go. All righty, chat. Here we go. You'd think by this time. Okay, that doesn't look like. Is that everything? Yeah. Okay. You'd think by this time we'd all be Zoom experts by December. Can people see that?
Press enter.
Ah. Minor
There we
detail.
go.
There we go. Ta-da. Okay. So, yeah,
you.
I now just do 2 a year. When I was younger, I did 3. I'm trying to say, I think one year I may have done 4, but that was a bit too much.
Do you have people that, I wonder for the avid birders, and a birder is by definition avid.
Avian.
Right. People plan vacations and say, oh, I'm going to go birding over here, and I'm going to go part of this Christmas bird count, and I'm going to go to this other state and do that because I haven't been up there or not.
I do know some people who have done that. Yes. And sometimes, well, obviously this year people aren't traveling so much, but they're saying, gee, while I go to visit my relatives in some other state, my kids and grandkids in another state, I'm going to move away from the, family hearth for a day and go birding while I'm out there. But yes, there are people who do that. Mm-hmm. And I mean, people really get hooked on this, do it for decades. And it's just rewarding and fun. And again, it's hard to get up and out of bed on those cold, dark mornings, but I'm always glad I did it. So, well, I hope to, hear that some of you have done this and have gotten involved. And again, this may not be the best year because, Audubon said no carpooling and all. So that makes it really hard to, normally I'd say, oh, I have room for somebody else in my car. Come along with me,
Well, maybe there'll be more feeder watchers this year because of it.
Yeah, no, that's been commented on. A couple of years ago, somebody came with me who had never done a Christmas count, and we saw a field full of, little tiny birds feeding there, and we were able to pull over and look at it. And I think it was horned larks or something, or a few pipits mixed in. And her excitement, it was just, it made it so special. I wasn't blasé, but she was just over the moon. And it's always fun to have people along who are seeing some birds for the first time. We call that life birds. So, it's really enjoyable. So again, find the appropriate circle and contact the compiler and say, I live in your circle. I want to be a feeder watcher. Tell me what to do. And again, you need to record how many hours it doesn't have to be contiguous hours even. If you're a feeder watcher, you don't have to get up at dawn. You can say, I'm gonna watch from 10 to noon and that's it. Great, you know, great. Feeder watchers get a species we don't necessarily see in the field.
All right, Janet, any more questions for Janet while we're here? Yep, Lynn.
I was just waving thank you.
Oh, just waving. Okay.
Oh, just wait a minute. There are no more questions. I do hope that this has piqued your interest, especially if you're into birds, because it's like birding with a purpose. You're actually, not that that means that birding, you know, without collecting data is not what the purpose that is, but it gives you an added purpose because you are collecting data that is very, very useful. And again, it is part of a huge data set that scientists are using to research all different aspects of our natural world. So I hope that you do get involved with this program and stay tuned and come back and see us in January. Again, it's an easy community science project where you can set it up at your house. And again, the data is so important. And maybe see you at one of our evening programs coming up as well. In the meantime, everybody stay safe and happy birding.